Well, these are the signs.
I'm just counting who we've got and who we don't have.
Okay. Oh. We're gonna have 9. We need 9 for half of them. Oh,
We have 9.
9.
All right. Tom, are we ready?
Yeah, good to go.
All right. This is I'll call the meeting to order. It is the Lessard-Sams Outdoor Heritage Council meeting. Today is Wednesday, May 28th. 8:32. Welcome to everyone, especially our new members. Exciting to have you here. The first thing we do is review and approve the agenda. For
David,
those,
do we need attendance?
oh, we need a roll call vote. I'm sorry. The first thing we do is a roll call vote, which Tom will call the roll.
All right, members. Starting with number 1 on our list, Hartwell.
I am here.
Hartwell present. Shara.
He's here.
Shara present. Baird.
Present.
Baird present. Representative Burkle. Eggerling. Senator Herr. Matt Kucharski.
Here.
Matt Kucharski present. Senator Lang.
Here.
Lang present. Palmer. Saxog.
Here.
Saxog present. Suss. Suss present. Representative Vang.
Present.
Representative Vang present. That is 8 members present.
All right, we have a quorum. With that, we need to approve the agenda. The one thing I would do, Matt, who is joining us in his first meeting from Argentina, may not be with us for the entire meeting. And I'd like to move the discussion under 9, request for a conversion conveyance up to right after 7 to make sure we would have his vote, assuming we get one more person here to allow us the 9 votes we would need. But with that correction, I'd love a motion for approval of the agenda.
So moved, Mr. Chair. Saxon.
Great. One thing I was asked to mention to Ted is these microphones are very sensitive. So if you don't want to be heard and you say something, push the little button and the red light comes on. You have to hold it down.
Thank you.
Otherwise, your side conversations might be heard by everyone. Anyhow, the agenda's been moved. Are there any suggested corrections? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next is to review and approve the minutes of the, and I got it out of order. I'm sorry. What? The minutes.
There you go.
Sorry. Of the January 3rd meeting, I'd take a motion for approval.
So moved. Saxon.
Motion is moved. Any corrections, adjustments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. For those of you that are new, this hybrid meeting strategy, we're allowed to have motions approved without a roll call vote of the minutes and the agenda, but everything else has to be by roll call. So the first thing we do is if anyone has a conflict of interest in today's agenda, please declare it now. Does anyone have a conflict? I'm not seeing any. Great. My comments are really just sort of welcome to our new members especially. Great to have you all here. I have met with all the new members. I've told them I personally, and I know all other members are happy to answer any questions that you have as we get into this about what we're doing. We encourage you to ask the questions, to wonder why we do things the way we do them. It's always good to have fresh eyes. I thought I'd give everyone who's new just a moment to introduce themselves, if that's all right. And Matt, you're first on the list. If you're willing to just give us a little 2-minute who you are and why you're here, that would be great.
Sure, David. Thank you very much. And hello, everybody. I'm Matt Kaharski, and I'm honored to be on this council with you all. I grew up in Wisconsin, over on the east side, but I've spent most of my adult life after college here in Minnesota. Long time conservation advocate. Spent a long time on the Pheasants Forever board of directors and chaired the national board for 3 years up until last July. I have a lovely wife and a daughter and a new adopted grandson and three hunting dogs, 1 lab, and 2 idiot GSPs. So it's nice to be here with you all.
Great, thank you. Daryl's not with us. Ted?
Ted Suss, first of all, I too am honored and pleased to be here. Looking forward to participating in the decision-making of this body. I live 2 miles west of the Lessard-Sams State Park. My driveway and the state park driveway are on the same gravel road. Started out my public career in the Minnesota legislature back when I was, as my friend Tom Stoa says, a boy legislator back in the 70s. Have been involved with the Isaac Walton League of Minnesota. I'm a chapter president of a chapter in Bloomington. A couple of you have stopped there to visit with me. And I was the state president for a couple of years, a few years back. And I am the unpaid executive director of the Friends of the Minnesota Valley.
Thank you for your service. Representative Bang?
Morning, everyone. Happy to be here. I'm Samantha Vang. I represent Brooklyn Center and Brooklyn Park, the northwest suburb area. I've been in the legislature this is my 4th term now, and currently chair of Legacy Finance Committee with co-chair Joe McDonnell as well. Leon has been part of this council for the past 3 terms, so I got big shoes to fill. So happy to be here and to learn from all of you.
Great. Thank you all for your willingness to serve. We look forward to working with you. Any other comments or questions from the council before we get into the business of the day? All right. The first thing on the agenda is officer elections. And I would just say, I'm not sure exactly how to handle this, but we put it on the agenda because it's a requirement that we do this when we get the opportunity. And practice has been to have elections once we have the council members all appointed every 2 years. I'm currently the chair, Ron is the vice chair, Jamie was the treasurer, and the secretary is Kristen. And we can either do the elections today, or we can put it off and do it in June once the council will, I think, more be in person. I haven't heard that anyone really wants a position, but maybe I just don't know. I'm happy to continue to serve in my chair. I don't know about Ron. I think Kristen called me and said she was on a plane today and can't be at the meeting, but she's willing to serve as secretary. I really throw it out to the council as to, do you want to have the elections today? Do you want to put it off till June? Boy, this is helpful.
David, there's no reason to put it off, I don't think, unless you wanted more council members in attendance.
My interest is to make sure that everyone feels included. And if anyone wants a position desperately, we have a discussion about that. No one has said a word to me, and I haven't been out soliciting that. So I'm willing to do whatever the council is willing to do. I really don't want to make the call myself. Does anyone have, it's very challenging as a new member to know how to answer this question, and I don't know if it gets better in June. But I don't want to presume anything. So anyone have any strong feelings?
As a new member, I have no objection to having the election today, and I know less about the other people than anyone here.
Okay.
Yeah, I feel, I mean, if nobody has come forth to request to be considered for those positions, I would be comfortable with us voting today. We do have quorum. So if the chair would like to do that, I'm certainly okay with it.
Okay, Suzanne, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fine with it either way. No longer being the newbie, I still have questions about never gone through this election process and was kind of unaware that this was kind of on the table and stuff. So are all positions open for nomination and election, and how does the nomination process function at this point?
So if we have the elections, members can nominate or not be nominated by another member. The process that we've established is that there are 5 officer positions. One is a legislative liaison position, reserved for one of the 4 legislators. There's the chair, vice chair, treasurer, and secretary in that order. Once the chair is selected, whomever the appointing authority is for the chair, that means that the vice chair has to come from one of the other 2. And then once the vice chair is elected, the treasurer has to come from the one remaining appointed member, and then the secretary is open game. We can override that if we choose, but that's our procedure. So we elect first the chair, then the vice chair, then the treasurer, and then the secretary. We have, I think, waived the requirement for appointing authority thing on one time before. The purpose of that was to not have undue influence of any one appointing authority, and it's been with us for a long time. Frankly, this council has worked so collaboratively, it probably isn't as relevant as it was when it was first determined to do it that way, but that's still in our procedures. So I personally would be comfortable waiving that, but that's a council decision. But the purpose was to make sure, the governor didn't get to control what was going on. But as I say, there's been great collaboration, and we haven't ever had the issue come up in any way. So that's how it works, Suzanne. Is that clear enough to you?
Sort of, yeah. I think so. So everybody is up for election.
Everybody's up for election every 2 years.
Okay. Gotcha.
And it isn't stated specifically, but practice has been to not have elections until all appointments are made. because it was felt
Okay.
that, you know, those of us that would continue to serve but hadn't been reappointed and may not be reappointed really shouldn't have a vote. Again, it's part of the collaboration that we've worked so well with.
Okay.
So, Mr. Chair,
Yes.
and this is Saxog, and I apologize for my voice. It's hay fever country up here right now. And, but I guess what I'm thinking is that, it's important that if somebody has some particular axe to grind, that's a bad way of putting it, that have some concerns that they'd like to deal with, they should let us know, and we can either postpone the election until those are taken care of, or whatever. But that not being the case, I think that our the way we do things has been done pretty well, and it sounds to me from the new people we have on this have been added to this commission that there are going to be some pretty good additions.
So are there any objections to holding the elections today? I'm not seeing anybody say anything, so we'll hold the elections. I guess the floor is open for nominations for chair.
Mr. Chair, I would nominate David Hartwell for chair.
Second.
Thank you for the vote of confidence. Are there any other nominations? I guess nominations are closed. Tom, will you call the roll?
All right, members, nature of the motion would be to elect Hartwell as chair, starting with number 2 on our list, Shara.
Yes.
Shara votes aye. Baird.
Aye.
Baird, aye. Kuharski.
Aye.
Kuharski, aye. Senator Lang.
Aye.
Senator Lang, aye. Saxhog.
Aye.
Saxhog, aye. Suss.
Can't hear. Suss, aye.
Suss, aye. Representative Vang.
We didn't hear that.
Representative Vang.
Aye.
Representative Vang, aye. Hartwell.
Aye.
Hartwell, aye. Mr. Chair, there are 8 ayes, 0 nays.
I guess I'm your chair. Thank you for your confidence. Nominations are, let me back up. Do we want to follow our procedures and require the vice chair and the treasurer to be from different appointing authorities, or waive that requirement?
Mr. Chair, are you and Ron from the same appointing authority?
We are not.
Okay.
Hearing nothing, we'll keep the procedures as they are. I'm open to nominations for vice chair.
I nominate Ron Shara.
Are there any other nominations? All right, nominations closed. Tom, will you call the roll?
Members, this vote being for Shara for vice chair, starting with number 3 on our list, Baird.
Aye.
Baird, aye. Kuharski.
Aye.
Kuharski, aye. Senator Lang.
Aye.
Senator Lang, aye. Saxhog.
Aye.
Saxhog, aye. Suss.
Aye.
Suss, aye. Representative Vang.
Aye.
Representative Vang, aye. Hartwell.
Aye.
Hartwell, aye. Shara.
Ron? You're on mute. Ron, you're muted.
Aye.
Shara, aye. Mr. Chair, there are 8 ayes, 0 nays.
Congratulations, Ron.
Thank you,
Um,
David. I'm sorry, I hit the wrong button. Everything disappeared.
We're wondering about competency here.
Well, I already had the majority vote, so I wasn't worried about it. But no, thank you. It's fun working with you, David, and the council, and
So
appreciate that.
following our procedures, Daryl or Kristen would be nominated to be treasurer. Neither are here to know what they think about being for that position. And
Secretary comes third.
secretary comes third.
Yes, sir.
I spoke wrong. That makes it a lot easier because Kristen is the current secretary and I know she's willing to serve. Daryl, I have no idea. Is there a nomination for secretary?
I nominate Kristen.
All right. Are there any other nominations? Nominations are closed. Tom, call the roll.
Members, this vote being for Eggerling for treasurer.
No, for
excuse me,
secretary.
For secretary, starting with number 7 on our list, Kaharski.
Aye.
Kaharski, aye. Senator Lang.
Aye.
Senator Lang, aye. Saxhog.
Aye.
Saxhog, aye. Suss.
Aye.
Suss, aye. Representative Vang.
Aye.
Representative Vang, aye. Hartwell.
Aye.
Hartwell, aye. Shara.
Aye.
Shara, aye. Baird.
Aye.
Baird, aye. Mr. Chair, there being 8 ayes and 0 nays.
We have a new we have a re-election of Kristen as treasurer. Last as secretary. This is fun. Lastly, treasurer. Are there any nominations for treasurer? We have an opening. This was something Jamie did for those that are new. The treasurer, essentially, the primary job is just to review the information coming out of the office of the finance folks in terms of how much money we actually have available and the questions related to that, which there have been lots of questions and frankly, there've been some frustration. No matter what you say, that's probably going to persist and it doesn't matter who does the job, but we need someone who's willing to ask those questions.
And Mr. Chair, if I may, for clarity, those questions are, or that frustrations is kind of understanding what how the forecast comes about and what that forecast is each year. Am I correct in that, saying that?
I would add to it the turnback issue, which, this year wasn't as bad as last year, but last year we had, something like $20 million that just appeared after we made our recommendations. And we got an answer. I won't say it was a crystal clear answer as to why we had more. But we need someone to fill that role. Is anyone interested? Matt, is your hand up? No, that's my hand. That's my hand on your face. I'm sorry.
I was like, whoa, I would at some point during this 4 years, I would be happy to raise my hand for an officer position, but being brand new, that would just not be appropriate at this time.
All right. Who would like to do it?
Would Susan like to do it? My question.
Thanks, Ron.
Huh?
Throw me under the bus. Throw me under the bus, Ron.
No. I just think you'd be a great at the job.
Well, I appreciate that. Finances, maybe not my strong suit, but I'm more than willing to try to dive in. I am interested in being an officer at some point as well. As I have a whole year under my belt now, so I guess I'd be willing to take that role on with probably a lot of help from you and David in this process. So you're gonna have to kind of guide me along. So,
Mark leaned over and said he's willing to help you.
okay. All right. Thanks, Mark.
So Ron, is that a nomination?
Absolutely. I would nominate Susan Barrett as treasurer.
All right. Any other nominations? Nominations are closed. Call the roll, please.
Members, this vote being for Baird as treasurer, starting with number 8, Senator Lang. Sorry, Senator Lang, could you repeat?
Aye.
Senator Lang, aye. Saxhog.
Aye.
Saxhog, aye. Suss.
Aye.
Suss, aye. Representative Vang.
Aye.
Representative Vang, aye. Hartwell.
Aye.
Hartwell, aye. Shara.
Aye.
Shara, aye. Baird.
I suppose I.
Baird, aye. Kaharski.
Aye.
Kaharski, aye. Mr. Chair, there are 8 ayes, 0 nays.
We have a treasurer. Congratulations, Suzanne. Thank you
very
for your,
much.
thank you for your confidence, council. I will be delighted to, a legislative member. We need a legislative member. We have 2 on the line today. Are either of you willing to serve?
Who's the current?
I think Senator Lang.
I think I am, yeah. And just the executive committee, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, I'd be willing to do it again.
All right. Is there a nomination for Senator Lang?
I would nominate Senator Lang.
Any other nominations? Nominations are closed. Please call the roll.
Members, this vote being for Senator Lang as legislative member, starting with number 10 on the list, Saxhog. Saxhog.
How's this? Yes.
Saxhog, aye. Suss.
Aye.
Suss, aye. Representative Vang.
Aye.
Representative Vang, aye. Hartwell.
Aye.
Hartwell, aye. Shara. Shara.
Ron?
I was watching Senator Lang drive somewhere. I'm trying to figure out if he's going fishing or what, but yes, aye.
Shara, aye. Baird.
I.
Baird, aye. Kaharski. Sorry, Matt, could you repeat?
Aye.
Kaharski, aye. Senator Lang.
Aye.
Senator Lang,
And-
aye. There being 8 ayes and 0 nays.
Great. Thank you. We have an election of our legislative member. For those of you that are new, we have the officers making up the executive committee. Having said that, we've never called an executive committee meeting because of the open meeting law. We have to have an executive committee meeting that is open to everyone, in which case all members are invited anyhow. And we've never wanted to do business with the executive committee overriding the council. So it's there just in case, but it's never been officially used because there's never been a reason to do that. So congratulations to everyone. Look forward to working with you. As questions come up, please feel free to reach out to myself or any other officer or the staff. And and we'll do our best to explain what's going on and interested in your opinions. Next, we'll turn to Executive Director report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, members. We got a number of things here. We'll try to pop through them fairly quick. First of all, just a legislative update for you. The bill, the Omnibus Legacy Bill passed on Sunday, the 18th of May. I don't know if it's been signed by the governor yet or not, but anyway, it passed the legislature. We don't anticipate the governor won't be signing if he hasn't already.
18th should.
He did sign it already?
Well, if it was the 18th,
All
it better be.
the lobbyists are giving me thumbs up, so thank you. Yeah, good. We're all done. Before I turn it back to see if Representative Vang or Senator Lang have any comments on that and the legislative session, just draw your attention that in your packets, there's a memo from the January or from actually March 7th, a memo from the chair and the vice chair explaining to the council what happened with the February forecast. And with that February forecast, there was a small change to a relatively small change to the recommendations from the council. There was a $6.4 million reduction in what the council recommended for projects. That came about in the memo. It explains that, and also attached to your packets also is a letter from the Department of Revenue. David alluded to it earlier, but there was a miscalculation used by the Department of Revenue for figuring out how much monies went into each one of the accounts each year, into the Outdoor Heritage account, the Parks and Trails, the Alderson Cultural Heritage, and also Clean Water Fund. And what they were doing, unfortunately, was they were putting in a little bit too much. So over the years, it ended up being about $30 million or $31 million. And they needed to, once they found it, they needed to make a correction right away. So that's in the letter and in the memo. And that accounted for about $10.475 million reduction for Outdoor Heritage, but we had some extra revenues that came in with the February forecast. So it ended up being about $6.4 million reduction.
And just to, yeah, the 30 million was for the legacy amendment. So the 10 million was a third, which is what goes to us to recommend.
Yep, absolutely. Thanks for that clarification. Also in your packets, there was one amendment that was placed on the Outdoor Heritage portion of the omnibus bill. And that amendment, it was removed in conference committee, but I've put it in your packets anyway for your information. And it's worth looking at because I think at some point when we have some more time, it'd be good to hear your opinions on that potential amendment, so that next year or a year in the future, if it comes up, we can actually say the council has discussed this type of activity or this type of change. From a staff standpoint, what the amendment basically would have done was not really, there was no problem looking to be fixed. It was more of an answer in search of a problem, I think, from my perspective. And I believe what it would have done from a staff perspective, at least, was it would have slowed down the work of doing restorations and enhancements, incredibly slowed it down. But that said, I'll just leave that comment as it sits. And then we want to come back now to Senator Lang or Representative Vang. If either of you have any words to share, you are both authors on the bill, and we thank you for that very much, as well as shepherding it through and your votes and your great words as it made it through the legislature.
Yeah, I would just second that. We had a great legislative team that got this done and took our recommendation seriously, and we appreciate that so much.
Senator Lang or Representative Vang, either of you want to share anything?
Mr. Chair and Mark Johnson, thank you all for all your work and helping us navigate through this process as not only as a new chair, but Also, we're in a unique time with being co-chairs and whatnot. And so it was great to learn and relearn what each of these funds entails and what these investment dollars look like when we put it into each of these funds. And regarding the amendment language that you mentioned about, Mr. Johnson, I think it came from the Senate side, and when we were conferencing, it wasn't something that was widely discussed, but when I did read the amendment, I did find it quite troubling. And I do agree with your sentiment that it could slow down the process. And that's not something that I'm also supportive of. So I think I'm not sure how it arrived in the Senate, but at least on the House side, it wasn't like a major talking point on the House side, even between with me and Coach McDonald. So it was definitely, so it seemed more like out of nowhere. And there wasn't much discussion on the House side, but I think Coach McDonald and I were on the same page on taking the recommendations of the councils.
Great. Senator Lang, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I just first of all, it's good to be on the council. I think I asked Director Johnson earlier in the year when we were when we were presenting the bill to begin with, how long have I been doing this? And I've been in the legislature 9 years, and this will be my 9th big yellow or big white binder. So I've been doing it for 9 years. Yeah, and again, I think that especially to some of the new members, to speak about, I always speak about the purity, right, of Lessard-Sams and how, when I was first assigned to the council, I replaced Bill Engebretson years ago, and Bob Lessard came to my office and kind of, I think he kind of gave me the smell test, to make sure that I was worthy to be on the council. And I think that, over the years, the one thing that has always remained true is that the Lessard bill really doesn't get messed with a whole lot. The council, for the most part, especially in comparison to other councils, the recommendatory bodies like this, the bills just don't get messed with. So that being said, there is always things that, us as a council that we've talked about in the past several times, I think, you said it pretty well, Mr. Chair, is that we work well together. I think last year was probably one of the best, where the council as a whole had kind of, we really took slow baby steps on a bunch of bigger issues. And I think as time goes on, some of the procedures that we use on the council and when it comes to what the legislature does as far as amendments, we maybe should, set aside some time during some of our meetings to discuss some of these things. And, myself and Senator Herr have talked kind of on and off about, some of the things the council has said we would like to see changed. The amendment that's been discussed, really, it wasn't something I brought up, of course, but, and maybe that's part of the recommendation is how we do business, what we'd like to see change, what we'd like to see the same as far as our procedures go. But that being said, we have a very, wide leeway of what we can and cannot recommend, or what as far as the procedures we follow. And, I'm interested to see I've I've already been lobbied pretty hard on some of the proposals coming up. And the thing I've said is like, well, you guys are an even playing field with everybody else. And when I get my big binder, I'll start digging through it, and, we'll see how that goes. But yeah, So be proud of the fact that the council, for the most part, isn't. I mean, I don't think we've ever really taken an amendment or any big changes that the council hasn't asked for when it comes to legislative action. So that's a good thing. I think it speaks to the good work the council does. I think it speaks to the fact that when something good comes through, we support it. When something is a little different, sometimes we give some advice to the proposees that say, "Hey, why don't you come back again next year with a little different proposal?" And in just specifically speaking, Mr. Chair, I think that the one thing we did last year that we hadn't done before is we talked about, as a council, some of the projects in particular, and we gave them their due diligence as far as what they were trying to do, but we were able as a council to say, yeah, this really doesn't apply to what we do or how we do it. And I think that's an important distinction where even though we're supportive of the idea that, hey, we're constitutionally dedicated dollars that are in certain buckets, and if we want to say this doesn't belong here, and it's very, and I think that's maybe a good way of putting it. It's a very pure process how we're doing it, and I think that's speaks to the people that are on the council. It speaks to the the new members for sure. As you see how the process works here, I think it's pretty vetted. But yeah, I don't know if you have any questions of me, Mr. Chair, or anybody else on the council about how that works when it gets to the legislature.
No, I would just thank both of you for holding the bill to what the process and the recommendations were from the council. There are always pressures that you feel. And we know that, and we know you have to use a little political capital to live with the recommendations that are made, and we're deeply appreciative of that. I do think you're right. We've come up with good recommendations that have not been criticized at the legislature for the most part, which makes your job a little easier. And we've tried to spread the money across different types of activities and across geographies, so that it represents a good conservation effort in the state overall. And that helps dramatically as well. So I just would thank you both, as well as Senator Herr and Representative Burkle, for getting this done for us.
Couple more items yet.
Hmm?
Couple more items.
Yeah, no, Mark has. I'll turn it back to you, Mark. Oh, Matt, do you have a question? Oh, okay.
That was just using the little applause emoji in
Oh.
Zoom, not the not the thumbs up.
All right. Members, I'll keep going on. I've got a few more things just to draw your attention to in the packets. There are 2 letters from the DNR to Dakota County that are in your packet, and they're not really for discussion at this point, but it's for an FYI for you, for your information. These are a follow-up basically on similar communications between DNR and Dakota County from July, or that I presented the letter to you in July of last year. It's basically, this is a glimpse for you to see that DNR grants management really is doing its job, auditing accounts and auditing to ensure that funds are correct, not just correctly spent, but that reimbursements are correctly documented and audited and verified. And in this case, there were some reimbursements that were not allowed. And those are documented. They are public record, and I wanted to make sure you were aware of those so you can see that moving forward. Another thing that is in the packet is a whole big packet. Actually, first, there's another letter from DNR. It's from Carly Wagner, who is the Lock and Dam, basically the carp barrier coordinator for Lock and Dam number 5 project. And the letter, pretty much just to summarize, says that we're on track, we're making progress, we've still got some money left. We'll be back to you in June or July for some more money when we see the budget getting down and we're getting towards our next steps. So it's good sign, good signals from them that things are happening as should. And then there have been some OLA, Office of the Legislative Auditor audits happening. We knew of these earlier and they've been really interesting. One has been on the DNR lands acquisitions process, and another one has been basically about our heritage grants as well as other grants management. And because of that, our staff has been involved in both of those in answering questions for the OLA, giving them information, following up on it. It's been a really excellent communication interaction, I think, between the OLA and LSOHC staff, especially with Sandy. And I want to call her out on this and say thank you, because with the online system being so intimate in the management of the different appropriations, and the record keeping and the auditing we need to do of those things, Sandy is right there. That's her baby, and she's been wonderful in working with them. So thank you, Sandy. Speaking of Sandy, she's got a big packet of other information, updates for you, summary updates of appropriation accomplishment plans. So I'm going to turn it over to Sandy for just a little bit here. She can give you an update or an overview of what those are for your future reference.
So every year we try to give the council kind of a summary of the status updates. Status updates are due twice a year, August 1st and February 1st. So this report is a reflection of spending and accomplishments of the February 1st updates. I struggle with this every year because I'm a very, very detailed person, and I used to give the council this like 30-page packet with all these notes that made no sense to really anybody but me. So I tried to do it a little bit of a different way this year. But I just want you to know that we are willing to pull data and get information any council member wants in any way. So this was just my stab at sort of kind of having a new way to look at it. So I did 4 separate attachments that I thought might be helpful information. The first attachment is kind of has colored columns. And what this summarizes is spending to date by appropriation bill year. And so you can very clearly see what amount of money is left for what what is left that still needs to be done, just to kind of give you a sense of dollars that are left on the table and organizations still working on things. Attachment number 2 kind of coordinates with attachment number 1. So if you have questions, if you're looking at attachment 1 and you're like, oh, what were the extensions, or who are the 18 organizations still doing restoration work? It will be summarized in this attachment number 2. Now, we try to give this information as up to date as possible. So I do want to point out that on page 1, the third, the southeast thing, that's third in the first chart, that has been resolved. And so that final report has been completed late yesterday. So we didn't get to change it here before photocopying. So kind of what I did was I showed, who has completed their final reports, who has not, why haven't they, how much is left to spend. And then I also, as we progressed on to programs like 2021, 22, I tried to highlight folks that were at least 80% completed on acquisition. I want to say this is always a moving target. This is a snapshot in time. There are things that have been accomplished since this information was pulled together. But the best we can do right now is kind of tell you what was in those reports. Several people have filed final reports since this information was pulled, and that is reflected in here with the one exception I pointed out. Attachment number 3 just kind of shows programs that are closed, and how much has been spent to date in those closed programs. And I think this is a really great thing to show because you can see there's very little money left over in our bills at the end. A couple of years we had 6% turn back. That's probably because, one, maybe a large acquisition didn't get completed for, whatever reason. But you can see that our partners are spending the money down And then attachment number 4 is just a list by program order and by organization, lead organization, and kind of gives totals and balances left in programs and organizations. So I hope that this is better and a higher level that everybody will maybe find more useful this year. But as I stated, I am willing to take suggestions because this is a tool I'm trying to create for you. So please reach out. And if you have specific questions about anything in this packet or anything about programs, I am happy to answer questions about that at any time as well. So that's the summary.
And I would just, thank you, Sandy, for the detail. She is the one who keeps track of everything. And it's greatly appreciated. The how much money has been spent and how much is left is a question that's asked on the application that you'll see in late June on all the proposals that come to us. And then Sandy tends to update that so we have it current with when we actually have the hearings, because things do get spent over the summer. We did, partially COVID, partially other reasons, see an uptick in money that was appropriated and not spent, and then requests that were coming in for additional money that caused some concern. And I think the light of day Sandy has provided to us and to everyone tends to put a little more urgency on getting the money in the field quickly. Ron?
Thank you, Mr. Chair David. I wanted to echo your comments and also say I've been on the council for a long time, and Sandy is the protector of the people's money. I'll just put it that way. She follows up with how they're spending it, et cetera, and that's invaluable for us, especially. So Sandy, thank you for your hard work.
Matt?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'm still learning my acronyms. So just one quick question for Sandy as I was reading the reports. What is R/E?
Restoration enhancement.
Thank you. I'll mark that down in my notes.
2 final items.
Great, Mark?
Mr. Chair, members, just 2 final items and we'll be done with the director's report. First of all, I wanted to go back to Sandy now because the staff was able to go on a May 9th site visit. I stayed behind to watch the legislature for a TNC prescribed burn. But Sandy, would you please give your overview of that or your thoughts?
Yeah, well, I could just talk for probably an hour about this because it was a very exciting trip. And the council has seen one other burn. Tom's flashing up some photos too in real time so we can kind of see things. We had seen one other burn in the past, but it was a very small burn. So this was interesting because this was a very large burn that's part of a massive landscape, that part of that Ordway Prairie. So I'm just going to summarize this and say 2 things really stood out to me when I was on this trip. Number 1, the amount of time that goes into planning this massive of a restoration project on the size of this prairie was incomprehensible to me until I saw it. And to give you an example, we started out our day a little bit behind the 8 ball because they do a perimeter drive around the whole burn, and a few of the areas were not prepped like they thought they were going to be. So then they had to pause and everybody had to talk about, well, how are we going to handle this boundary because it's not like we thought it was going to be. And then they had done a bunch of trimming, and so there were a bunch of brush piles. So they were talking about, well, how are we going to handle these brush piles because we don't want these to ignite. So they discussed this. The other side of the parcel had been burned last fall. So it was already a good boundary. And so it was really and so when you think about the amount of time it takes to make a plan for this big landscape, this section needs to get cut this year. This section needs to get burned the fall before we want to burn this area. And so this points out the importance of phased programming, because there is no way this complex can be done in 4 years. I mean, you know, each area might take 4 years and all the coordination together. So that really stood out to me. And then the staff time involved in the planning of that, of the large prairie, and then each little separate sections plan and how that's going to all work together, and in what timeline is it going to happen. It was just incredible. So it's a lot of staff time. It's not the 20 fire people that are on the ground. It's mechanics that maintain that equipment. You know, it's making sure we have a water source nearby. What is that water source? I mean, I was flabbergasted. In fact, I asked the project manager, I said, how many hours do you put in before you even set a foot on this property with the fire people? And she's like, I never really thought about that. And I said, well, you should, because I would like to know, because it's a lot. So I just want to point out phase programming. This is how it works. And it really struck out. And then the other thing was just the staff time involved in the prepping of this. And they were getting, you know, minute to minute updates on the weather. Unfortunately, the burn was delayed 2 hours because of some boundaries that weren't prepped. And then the discussion had to happen around those boundaries. And then, so by the time they came around and they did their little test corner, I'm probably not using the proper terms, but they have like a little test area they do. It was determined by that time of the day then, when they started it, the wind had shifted and they were anticipating it to shift even more. So the fire was extinguished then because they couldn't actually complete the burn, which was also really amazing when you think of the time involved in this, getting all this equipment ready, 20 people on the ground, for something, you know, that didn't end up happening that day because of things that are out of control and burns. So it was an amazing trip. And I just want to say, people heavy, staff time heavy. And I mean, something like this could never be accomplished, I don't think, without phase programming. And this particular site was what, part of the Prairie Recovery? Yeah, Prairie Recovery Program. So that's all I have to say.
Cool. And your lungs are fully recovered?
Well, we didn't have a lot to inhale. 'Cause
I saw a little smoke.
But
I saw a little smoke.
I smelled like a campfire when I got home. So
Good.
Thanks, Sandy. Members, just one last thing. And Ron, I know you're kind of an emotional guy, so you might have to have a box of Kleenexes handy for this. But members, I just wanted to make you aware that I've been talking with the chair, and I have decided that I'm going to retire after the first of the year. So you got me for another half a year roughly, but letting you know this now so that you can plan the succession, plan what you want to happen. And you have plenty of time to do that. I think so. The executive committee can work with the LCC and figure out how you want to do hiring and who's going to be hired, that kind of thing. So that's it, Mr. Chair. That's my report for you.
All right. Well, I'm sorry you made the decision. I know you've been grappling with that for a couple of years, and we've benefited from your long commitment to us, and look forward to working through this year's recommendations with you. We will have, I think, in July, the LCC come and explain, maybe even June, the process that we'll go through. It is very complex in that the open meeting law applies to the hiring process. So actually, the executive committee can't meet without having an open meeting. So we'll talk about all that in June and July as to process. We're lucky to have the LCC who will manage that process for us. But we'll be involved, and we'll have to determine the level of involvement and how we want to actually handle it. So that's a future discussion. But I know Mark debated what was the right time, and as I said, we're sorry to see him go, and understand and wish him well. More time for grandkids.
More time to chase Ron's pheasants and catch his walleyes since he's not catching them.
Yeah, do you have permission to leave that post? You work for us, you know.
Moving on. We have in front of you the calendar, the proposed calendar for meetings. If there are any specific issues with any of the dates that have been chosen, this is the point in which we would love to hear those and see if we can find an alternative date that would work for more people. That said, August, the 25th, 26th, and 27th are on your calendar. Those are times when we will hear proposals. And we've reserved 3 days. We now know that we have 50, how many proposals?
Like 50.
58?
58.
58 proposals, which is a couple more than what we've had before. We don't know if we will hear all of them after they've been reviewed, but it's 58. Past practice is we can fit that into 2 long days versus dragging it out to 3. We have found in the past that doing a Tuesday, Wednesday is better than a Monday, Tuesday. And so I would propose that we adjust the calendar to only have the 26th and 27th of August instead of the 25th, 26th, and 27th, subject to what everyone thinks. Are there any conflicts that anybody's aware of on the calendar that we should address at this point? I'm not seeing a problem. Can we just, if anyone has a problem doing just the 26th and 27th versus the 25th, 26th, and 27th? All right. I'll consider the calendar approved with that adjustment. I don't think we need to take a formal vote on that. But that will be the calendar going forward. Next is a request for conversion conveyance of Minnesota DNR trout stream conservation easements. Having said that, we have 8 people here and we need 9 to.
Joe's double checking on that right now.
Joe is double checking on it. And give Joe just a moment. Joe, what's the word?
Mr. Chair and members, so we have a 2-for-1 today. I'm going to do a high-level overview of why we're here, and then MLT and DNR here to answer questions specifically to the project. So the Minnesota DNR acquired a trout stream easement on a parcel, and the Minnesota Land Trust is interested in acquiring a permanent conservation easement on the entire property that the landowner has. So the landowner enrolled first in the trout stream easement program, and that's a permanent conservation easement for DNR. And then they must have liked the idea so much that now they want to enroll the rest of their property in a conservation easement. The DNR is here because anytime something is acquired with outdoor heritage funds, either through a permanent conservation easement or in fee, there's a notice of funding restriction that's recorded on the property that ensures that the property is used in accordance with the outdoor heritage fund requirements.
Which is generally called a NOFR.
Yes, an NOFR, a NOFR is
Notice of funding restriction.
Correct. And so part of that NOFR language says if you further encumber the property, it has to be approved by the council, and then the council, if they approve it, it also has to be sent to legislative leadership for their review before that can actually happen. So the DNR is here for their property because they're the ones who acquired it. The council has to give permission for MLT to put their easement on top of that trout stream easement. Then in addition, we also have a requirement in our 97A let's see, it's 97A. 0.056 subdivision 9, it's called lands in public domain. So if a recipient of outdoor heritage funds wants to acquire a property with outdoor heritage funds that's already permanently protected, then you have to get permission from the council to do that. So because MLT may be using outdoor heritage funds to acquire the portion or the trout stream portion of that property, they also need to get permission from the council. And with subdivision 9, you have to have 9 members to vote in favor of it. And unfortunately, we have 8. So we just need, I was talking with them to try and figure out what the best path forward will be. So it looks like today the council would review the MLT putting the large overall conservation easement on top of DNR's easement. So we would approve that. And then we can talk, well, MLT will talk through the options of what they'd like to do with subdivision 9, of whether or not they want to move forward at a later date of getting approval from the council to use outdoor heritage funds for that portion of the trout stream, or if they'll be okay with moving forward, making sure that they get an appraisal done that shows the value, and they either use other funds for that portion or get approval some other way. So that's kind of the overview of why we're here.
So I'm perplexed. We need 9 votes for either of those actions, correct?
Mr. Chair and members, we only need 9 votes for the subdivision 9, so the lands in public domain. So the first vote, which would be allowing the conservation easement on top of DNR's easement,
All right.
only needs 7.
Okay, so for those of you that are new, the reason for this is we did not want early on, nor did the legislature want to see us protecting lands that were protected. It's sort of a, why spend the extra money? There have been cases where, such as this, where a portion of the land is protected and other portions are not. And the bigger property to be protected, you can't unprotect the small portion. So we've given our approval in the past to these types of actions, with the caveat that the appraisal, which the DNR has to review, takes into consideration the reduced value of property that's already got restrictions on it. So with that, I would be happy to turn it over to you. Keep it brief, since I don't think it's a very complex issue, other than we can't vote on the one issue. We can vote on the other.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. So my name is Rick Walsh. I work for Minnesota DNR and am the program manager on the Laws of 21 appropriation, whereby the trout stream easement was acquired. And I believe it's subdivision 15 that requires the recipient of those fundings to attest that any further encumbrance or conveyance of an interest, that the protection and the intent of the protection that we acquired that easement is still going to meet its intent and purposes following this additional protection of the greater property that overlaps with ours. And we do feel that it will indeed be the case that the trout stream easement is still going to meet its purpose. It'll still allow for public recreation in that it's about a 12.5 acre ribbon of land along the trout stream. The MLT easement, I believe, is about 68 acres covering the entire property, but the public recreation component will stick with the stream corridor as it is now. DNR will still have the authority to do habitat improvement and management within that corridor. And the terms of our easement are compatible with the terms of the MLT easement. So yeah, as the recipient of the grant funding that acquired the trout stream easement, I could, DNR is attesting that it would still meet its intent and purpose. Any questions? We can respond to those.
So are there any questions from the council? Wayne, I'm not going to make you present what I don't think you need to present. Matt? No, Matt's got his thumb up. Or do you have a
Yeah,
question?
sorry. No, I not a thumb up. It was actually a question. But I think Suzanne might have been up before me.
Or no, go ahead. We'll call you and then
Okay,
Suzanne
thank you.
is a patient person.
Great. Just for clarification, and I'm new to this, are the restrictions or the requirements on the original smaller easement different than on the expanded easement? Are they treated as two separate parcels, or is it essentially the same rules and requirements?
Chair, the easement terms would be different. They're not identical. The easement terms on the trout stream easement, because it's older in order of operation, it came first. Those would stay in effect for that 12.5 acre portion. Not being a real estate attorney, I don't know exactly how the other ones lay on top, but I think the additional restrictions that would come with the MLT easement would be on top of the terms of the DNR easement. I hope that answers the question.
Wayne,
They're different. They're different. Yeah.
They are different. Yep.
Chair Hartwell, council members, they are different. One of the things that our easement will do is sunset grazing rights associated with that, the entirety of the property, inclusive of the 12.5 acre easement, DNR trout stream easement. And so that's a change that will apply to the whole. But otherwise, you know, the terms are different, but they're still very comparable relative to one another.
And Mr. Chair and members, I would add that the sunset of the grazing rights on that property, we looked at it, I looked at it with DNR staff that manage that land, that easement, and feel that even in the absence of grazing, that corridor would stay in a desirable condition, the way the land is evolved. I don't know what the word is, the way the succession has happened there in the past few decades. It doesn't seem like one where woody encroachment is going to be a real issue in the absence of grazing.
You read my mind. Thank you.
Suzanne?
Well, that's kind of was my question as well, is, you know, which takes precedence. And, you know, if there's public access along that will stay in place for the stream easement, but is there going to be public access for the rest of the property as well? Or how will the members of the public know what those boundaries are? And is that going to be confusing?
Hopefully not to the member or to the public. There's signage that goes along trout stream easements to, you know, demark the where the easement lies. And let's see, I was going to address the first part of your question, but I kind of forgot it.
Okay. No,
I just repeat the question, please.
I think the question is essentially, will there be signage that say this new easement property is protected, but it's not public access? And that's at the landowner's option, I imagine. Wayne is nodding yes. So it's really at their responsibility and the land trust responsibility to properly post that.
And so my understanding from what you've tried to clarify is that the original easement takes precedence along the creek bed. And so the new easement does not put in, other than the restriction on grazing, does not change any of the other easement properties on the trout easement. Is that correct?
That'd be correct.
Yep. Member Baird and Chair, yes, what DNR will probably do once the MLT easement is in place, we will amend our easement to remove that grazing restriction, because it could be confusing to future landowners, for one thing, that they're going to see an easement that says no grazing allowed, they're going to see another one that says it does. So we would amend ours to make it consistent with the MLT easement, but that's the only thing that would change.
Yeah. Does a landowner have any concerns about eliminating grazing?
No, not at this point.
Okay.
Chair.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions? Chair would entertain a motion to grant approval to the land trust to use the dollars they have allocated to purchase an easement over the entire 62 acres, recognizing the value of the current easement would be calculated in the price.
So moved, Mr. Chair. Saks,
Wayne, thank you, Tom. Wayne, you look like I confused you.
Chair Harwell, council members, I was just looking at Joe to see if the chair had teed up that question right.
Yes. So, Mr. Chair, we can only approve the recording of MLT's easement on top of the DNR easement, but we can't approve the use of outdoor heritage
Okay.
fund dollars.
I would, with Tom's permission, I would restate the intent to allow the recording, and we'll come back for the approval of the funding use. Is that all right, Tom?
yeah, I accept that.
Sorry for the confusion. Hopefully, when we get to this at the June meeting and we have adequate members, we won't have to go through the whole discussion again. Any other questions or concerns? Tom, will you call the roll?
Members starting with number 10 on our list, Saxog.
Yes,
Saxog, aye. Suss.
Aye.
Suss, aye. Representative Vang.
Aye.
Representative Vang, aye. Hartwell.
Aye.
Hartwell, aye. Shara.
Aye.
Shara, aye. Baird.
Aye.
Baird, aye. Koharski.
Aye.
Koharski, aye. Senator Lang.
No.
Senator Lang, no. Mr. Chair, there are 7 ayes, 1 no.
Motion passes. I'm just curious, Senator Lang, is there something specific that we missed that you wanted to express, or?
No.
Okay.
I'm just gonna, I mean, maybe this is, I mean, it's not news to anybody on the council, but I'm gonna be very critical of private lands with public dollars without public access.
Okay.
I mean, this is a conversation obviously that we've had as a council several times, and I've had that conversation with a lot of the partners that we've worked with over the years, and I think this is probably the time to start making a move to say, hey, I understand the conservation aspect to it. However, public dollars deserve public access, and I know there is a portion of this, but we need to start working on that. That's just my viewpoint. I don't know. I mean, this is, we spend a lot of money every year on conservation easements that have no public access.
Okay. Thank you for your view. Moving on, we will have a presentation on restoration evaluations. Staff has met with DNR staff on this, and Suzanne, being our resident expert on restorations, sat in on that discussion and contributed, and I appreciate her taking the time to do that. So with that, I will turn it over to Wade Johnson.
Good morning, Chair Hartwell, members. Wade Johnson, Restoration Evaluation Program Coordinator with Minnesota DNR, also working on behalf of the Minnesota Board of Water and Soil Resources. Thank you very much for having me in this morning. I'm happy to talk to this group. As noted, we had started some conversation with staff and Council Member Baird, and I think that that is a good process moving forward. When I started coordinating this Legacy Fund restoration evaluation process 13 years ago now, one of the first sites, outdoor heritage fund sites that we visited was Tatley WMA way out on the South Dakota border, Yellow Medicine County. And so we walked the site with project partners, got to know it a little bit, did our evaluation, reviewed it with our panel, put it in the report at the end of the year. And it struck me at that time, there is so much more to tell about the story of what has gone on here, what partners have done to make that work happen and really move forward. And our evaluation sort of gleans a piece of it and fulfills our responsibilities, but there's a lot more to say. And so it really got me thinking about what more can we do to further provide information to stakeholders and funders like this group to advance the implementation of high quality practices. And over the years, our program has really focused on following through on the recommendations of our panel. And now as we enter into this final 10 years of legacy amendment, we're really interested to engage with the council, promoting greater understanding and alignment of our work and the work of the council. So I think we're making good progress forward. This morning, I will provide you an overview of the 2024 evaluation report, which I believe you all have a copy of. What is this? Sorry, the screen's telling me something. I'm not muted, am I? Okay, it says I am. And identify some specific opportunities for the council to leverage our findings from our program to improve future restoration projects. Very quickly, for new members on the council, statute for the Legacy Fund, Parks and Trails Fund, Clean Water Fund, and Outdoor Heritage Fund, 97A.056, Subdivision 10, directs DNR and Bowser to seat a panel of 6 restoration technical experts to evaluate legacy-funded restoration projects. Projects are directed to be evaluated relative to the current science and stated goals in the restoration plan. In doing our work, we engage project managers to gather information, go out on site with project managers and partners and third-party assessors, either state staff or contractors, to evaluate the projects per statute, again, relative to the current science and stated goals of the project, identifying any problems in implementation. We take this information back to our restoration evaluation panel, and they discuss what's working and make recommendations for improving future restorations. And finally, we want to ensure that our evaluations and recommendations have value to the council's work. As you see in the 2024 report that you should all have, what we have seen is that overall, most projects are on track to meet their stated goals using current science and being implemented without problems. And there are indeed opportunities for improvement. Greater than 3/4 of projects we have evaluated to date are assessed to be achieving or on track to achieve their stated goals. Specific areas for improvement are noted this year again, including quantifiable goal setting aligned with site-specific restoration plans, utilizing site-appropriate tree species and adapting selection as needed, and need for a robust plan to manage invasive species in site preparation and continued management. In aggregate, where our panel has seen the need for improvement, these have been shaped into our standing recommendations for improving future restorations. I invite the council to review these recommendations noted in this year's report and encourage you to see a full compilation of all the recommendations from our program on our DNR website. This year, we reviewed several projects that utilized goats in restoration as a tool. Those of you that have the report in front of you, you'll see on pages 10 and 11 of the 2024 report, you will find a discussion of that. Those of you familiar with this practice know goats can be effective for suppressing sprouts of woody invasives like buckthorn, bush honeysuckle at a scale that may be prohibited for utilizing human crews on sites like that. Goats also introduce a set of challenges and need for appropriate planning, contract specification, and continuity with ongoing management. Projects we reviewed generally applied appropriate practices. However, given the need and challenges of integrating goats and relative lack of specific guidance as a restoration tool, panel felt there was a need to identify some key considerations for managers. We also note the potential role of funders, including this council, in establishing criteria for project managers planning GOATS projects to ensure best outcomes. This guidance for GOATS also aligns with an ongoing recommendation for planning and implementing buckthorn management using phased and sequential approach. This is a topic that the council could use to help screen requests for efficacy and durability, and would be happy to discuss that further. This report also includes continued and re-emphasized recommendations from the panel, including a recommendation for project managers to utilize technical experts in review and planning for complex projects, such as multidisciplinary needs in stream and wetland projects, to benefit the consistent incorporation of current science and best practices. We also identify opportunities for funders to prompt project managers to identify technical capacity needs and refer them to appropriate staff and resources. I also bring your attention to the continued recommendation for improved documentation. This pertains to all phases of a project, from concept and decision-making to maintaining records and actual implemented methods, materials, and dates. Documentation also pertains to developing clear goals and associated quantifiable measures to track success. Also, we are happy to engage the council in discussing how you could operationalize these recommendations to support consistent, high-quality work. In addition to providing recommendations for improvement, our program also showcases what's working well in implemented restorations. An example of Lake Elmo Park Reserve in Washington County, you'll see on pages 16 and 17, highlights several successful attributes of their planning and implementation. First, the managers at Washington County Parks established a natural resource management plan for the whole 2,000-acre reserve, which provided direction for desired conditions and site-specific, prioritized, and phased actions to be taken. This enabled them to apply for a series of successful conservation partners grants to restore prairies and oak savanna within the park reserve. The restored prairie sites specifically targeted creating habitat for the endangered rusty patch bumblebee, using guidance from U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and the Xerxes Society to develop plans and create measurable goals to monitor and adapt practices. In the oak woodlands and savannas, the managers continue to implement a phased approach for mechanical removal of trees and shrubs, followed by strategic goat browsing, selective herbicide treatment, and moving into seeding with early successional grasses to enable fire as an ongoing management practice. Projects at Lake Elmo showcase the positive outcomes of employing practices aligning with our program's recommendations, including effective documentation, goal setting, tapping into outside technical expertise, and using GOATS as a tool in a larger phased and sequential restoration approach. Wrapping up on the 2024 report, as you'll see noted on pages 18 and 19, as a program, we on furthering recommendations from our panel and improving future work by continuing to evaluate projects, engage restoration experts, and communicate with stakeholders about lessons learned to improve future restorations enhancements in the state. This year in 2025, we are focusing our evaluations on stream restorations. We have 21 Outdoor Heritage Fund stream projects, as well as 15 Clean Water Fund and 4 Parks and Trails projects we plan to assess in this year, and we're getting that all lined up right now. Excited to get in the field. Wrapping up, in the years since I visited Tatley WMA way back in 2012, our program has evaluated 301 project sites across all funds, 145 of those being Outdoor Heritage Fund. We've learned much. Our panel has made targeted recommendations for improvement, and we now have continued opportunity to capitalize on what we've learned to improve future work. As mentioned at the start, we've initiated a conversation with council staff, including Councilmember Baird recently, to increase awareness and explore opportunities for more deliberate integration of our evaluation work where there is value to the council. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you this morning. I'm happy to follow up with questions and discussion with the council.
Great, thank you. Questions from the council? Suzanne, any thoughts you have as after sitting in on the meeting?
Not at this time. I think you did a good summary of going on, and it was really interesting to sit in on that meeting to understand, get a little better understanding of what's going on in this evaluation process, and just to understand that, you know, projects don't always go according to plan due to weather and other issues as well. And just to keep that in mind as we move forward with the evaluation process, that sometimes there are things external to the process that can influence the success or of some of these projects as well. But overall, it's important that we do these evaluations so that we can kind of correct the ship on projects where there's some issues as well. So, and to get a broader understanding of the key restoration practices that can be really successfully utilized over the process. So, and continue the education process for all of us. So, thank you.
Great. Two things for new members, or one thing for new members, and then a question that I have. We're required to put 0.1% of our estimated spend into this restoration evaluation program. It's a legislative requirement. So you'll see that later in the year as an automatic allocation because it's required by law. Ted, you've got a question?
Do we do that? I'm trying to think of the right term to use, collectively, or is that passed down through to the individual projects that they have to budget for that?
No, it is out of our general budget, not out of each individual
Collective
project.
appropriation,
Yep.
not the individual projects. Thank
Yep.
you.
Yeah, that'd be a nightmare to do it by
That's what I
individual
was
project.
thinking.
I just had a question. It's perplexed me for some time about goats and how effective they are at actually they're used primarily for buckthorn eradications or from my experience. How effective you see that compared to traditional methods, number one, and number two, if there's been any analysis of the cost difference. I have watched the price of goat herds go up significantly, and I've wondered if it's really competitive. And I'm wondering if you've looked at either of those issues.
Thank you, Chair Hartwell, council members. So, like with just about any restoration tool or practice that you'd employ, there are trade-offs. And goats are no exception. There is a place for using goats as a tool, and almost no restoration tool is a one and done, one off. We did it, it's done, we walk away. And it's one of the things we emphasize is understanding all the tools that you want to bring to bear to achieve your long-term outcomes and thinking about it, as we often say, in a phased and sequential way to know what do we need to do first, what do we do next. For instance, that example of Lake Elmo is a good one where they're doing a lot of tree clearing, shrub clearing. You got to get it down to the ground. Then you bring the goats in for a defined amount of time with a certain browsing intensity within defined paddocks, and you work closely. That's why we emphasize, writing really tight contracts for how that gets set up and the controls that you can have working with that operator. This bridges into your second question about cost going up. It is an effective tool. I will say that a few years ago, I was a little bit not so sure because everyone was so head over heels with liking the goats, and it created a lot of good PR and everyone enjoys it. But there's a need to understand that it's one phase of a process. They will go in and they're somewhat indiscriminate. There is a place in the space, and it has more to do, in my observation, with scale. I can think of another really good example that I saw this past year at Frontenac State Park, where DNR Parks had been working for years to clear some, it might be, on the bluffs down there. At a scale, tens and, I think up to 100 acres that they've worked on, that would be cost prohibitive to have human crews going in there, cutting and treating at that scale and dealing with the resprouts. You need to be very mindful of the impacts. You need to understand whether or not it's a site that it's okay to bring goats into, because goats, they're fairly indiscriminate. And there are sites you would not want to bring them into because there are sensitive plants and sensitive sites that are liable to erosion, et cetera, that could be really impacted. But they have a place in the space. Your second question about cost effectiveness, I have observed this too, that the cost is going up. I don't have any defined numbers on that, but I would say, again, back to the economy of scale, when you're working with tens of acres on steep bluff lands that have a lot of nooks and crannies in between the rocks and places that you're not able to get to very effectively with human crews, the goats will get in there and browse that stuff down. And the goal being you're using those goats as a phase, and then you're able to hopefully, in many conditions, get to a place where you're able to start using fire as a management tool, because just putting the goats in, it's like going in and cutting down buckthorn and not doing anything about it. You're going to get the same problem again unless you go back and follow up. And in terms of the cost, it has gone up. My estimation is that it would still be cost effective. In some places, I've seen projects down in southeast Minnesota on blufflands, managing primarily for openness for things like timber rattlesnake. And at that scale that they're just trying to keep open, goats are really still quite cost effective. The biggest challenges, I think, and this is probably one of the reasons why the cost is going up, is you need to be really tight on your contracts. You need to know that that operator is going to be able to go out there and move them paddock to paddock, or even, reduce the intensity if the browse is too much, and be able to be a little bit more fine-tuned in what they're doing. And I think the operators have now caught wise to how much that's costing them to go to some of these remote sites and move goats around, put fences back up, bring the goats back in when they get out. Additionally, and this is sort of an aside, but I think it also nods to the cost question. Almost every goat project that I have observed, whether it be in the city of St. Paul or remote regions of Kandiyohi County, the largest issue that folks run into is people. People taking down the fence, people turning off the electricity, people kidnapping goats, literally. And having to deal with that. So the managers, when they find out, they call up their goat operator. And I think these goat operators, there's only so many that are, mindful enough about using goats as a restoration tool. I think they've come to realize and internalize some of the costs of having to go out to some of these sites repeatedly and invest a lot more time and money than they were anticipating at the front end. What could or should seem reasonable in the contract is starting to come back around. Just managing people.
I remember once watching Les Kuba give a tour at the Natural History Museum and showing a group of elderly women the sandhill crane diorama, and pointing at the sandhill cranes and saying, "Them dudes is good to eat." Apparently people think the same about goats. So, Matt, I saw your hand up.
It's okay. It's a question I can ask at another time. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Next is was a request for conversion conveyance and permission to record a notice of funding restriction by the Arboretum. They have pulled this, but I'm going to bring it back and make a recommendation to the council. This is an issue that came to staff, And in its original format, it created enough questions as to whether or not staff had the authority to actually make a determination that this was allowable under the, we've allowed staff to approve minor amendments to activities under protected property. And staff was a little uncomfortable with this. They asked me to meet with the Arboretum, which we funded over 10 years ago to purchase property north of the core of the Arboretum. The request, as I heard it, was to acquire with other money additional property, and then put a conservation easement on property that we had already purchased that would make it pollinator friendly, paid for by someone else. That money would then purchase additional property, and the protection that we got as a result of our funding would be extended to that additional property. And they wanted to know if that was okay with us. In addition, they've put they want to put a tunnel underneath Highway 5, so they can access the property without crossing Highway 5, which they now have to do. And this is part of a big Department of Transportation improvement. In doing that, they have a current access easement, which they're willing to abandon and restore if we would be okay with them putting a new access easement in. It ended up being an hours long conversation, and I asked them hopefully that we could present it and not have an hour-long presentation for everyone, because when you boil it down, it's relatively simple. But the story takes a long time. So I would love to have the council give staff authority, as long as nothing's changed, to make this determination and work with the Arboretum so we don't have to listen to an hour-long presentation. Would anyone have an objection to that? It is additional conservation value that our dollars would leverage. I'd like to put in a formal motion giving staff approval or giving staff the approval to approve this project, as long as we get additional acreage and the existing right-of-way is abandoned and restored. Any questions? Tom, can you call the roll? And
Members starting with number 11 on our list, Suss.
that was you.
Yes.
Suss, aye. Representative Vang.
I think we lost her.
Not lost her.
Hartwell.
Aye.
Hartwell, aye. Shara.
Aye.
Shara, aye. Baird.
Aye.
Baird, aye. Koharski.
Aye.
Koharski, aye. Senator Lang.
Aye.
Senator Lang, aye. Saxhog.
Aye.
Saxhog, aye. Mr. Chair, there are 7 ayes, 0 nays.
Great, motion passes. That will avoid a long discussion. Tom or Ted, you have a question?
Question. I assume that this is similar to other projects that we fund. Would it be our intent to include that type of language in all future motions? Or do you want to keep it where you want to see what the changes are before?
Generally, what will happen is someone will come and say, I want to, the Department of Transportation wants to widen the road. We'll pay you, the value of the 1/4 of an acre that we're going to take, and staff has the authority to approve that. This is unusual because it's far more complex
Okay.
than the normal thing, and staff was uncomfortable just blessing something that complex without the council being aware of it.
The council's normal approval motions would include staff authority for normal changes.
We have given staff the authority to make those. They have to notify certain folks and such, but there's a procedure, and we've allowed them to make those minor modifications without having to take up our time. This was just far more complex. Next, we'll move to item number 11, Minnesota Duck and Pheasant Action Plans update.
Mr. Chair, just a question is, have we covered all of the items requiring a vote? And I do need to hop off.
We have.
Great. Thank you all.
You're gonna go on a tour that you don't get to a say of where we're going as a result of you leaving now, but go have a good time.
That's what I understand. I appreciate that. Thank you all. Nice meeting you and looking forward to working with you.
Great, thank you. Appreciate you calling in. All right, I think this is a virtual presentation from Joe and Rob, and I'll turn it over to you.
Sounds good. Thank you, Chairman Hartwell. Can you hear me okay?
We can.
All right. And there is my presentation. So we should be good. As long as everybody can see the presentation.
No, we can't.
Ah, shoot. I thought I just had it. Oh, there we go.
There.
I just got to remember how to use Zoom.
Can you hear me
how's
okay
that?
too, Joe? Rob
Yep,
here?
Gotcha.
Okay.
Well, I want to thank you for inviting us to present on our duck and pheasant action plans. Chairman Hartwell, council members, today, as mentioned, I am Joe Stengel. I'm the acting regional wildlife manager in the Southern region. As part of this project, I was the project manager for the pheasant action plan. With me today is Rob Baden. Rob is the area wildlife supervisor at Detroit Lakes. He was the project manager of the duck action plan. So we're going to walk you through a presentation of kind of where we've been and where we're going, and hopefully get you familiar with where we're at on these plans. All right. All right, so today we're gonna cover a little bit about what we looked at for the scope of the plans, the refresh, if you will, a little bit about the process overview and timeline, so you have a good understanding of what went into the plans, and then some of the highlights of the new duck and pheasant action plans, and then going forward, how we're going to make these plans actionable and implementable and go through implementation, which is an important part of creating a plan, as you know. So when we kick things off, the intent was to look back at the 2020-2023 pheasant and duck action plans, which and look at doing an update and a refresh based on things we learned from those plans, new priorities within the department and from stakeholders, and move forward. Action plans are supposed to be sort of short-term plans that complement longer, larger, long-term plans, such as the long-range duck recovery plan that was drafted in 2006, our long-range pheasant plan from 2005, and the 2015 Pheasant Summit Action Plan. So we were going to take a look back, look at past performance, and then refresh some of the structure and priority strategies within that plan. Those changes could, include, maybe conditions have changed since 2020 to 2023. Maybe new strategic issues have come forward. We would identify those revisions through a stakeholder, partner, public process, and then look at setting those priorities for the next 5 years. So now we're going to go back and forth a little bit. I'm going to let Rob kick off and talk a little bit about how we were organized as projects.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, just a quick project organization. Myself as a project manager, you see Kelly Strock, our division director, was our executive sponsor there. And then we had some of our statewide leads. Bruce Davis kind of heads our research group. He was kind of the species lead, kind of that research background. Nick Brown with our Shallow Lakes program helped with a lot of the writing, kind of was the plan lead. Our habitat lead, Ricky Lean, I'm sure you guys are familiar with him. Kind of that habitat side of the duck plan. And then we had a project team made up of kind of select DNR staff members from around the state that dealt with Shallow Lakes program, wetlands program, kind of our acquisition, our outreach, DNR outreach, and then all the members of our waterfall committee were on this kind of rewrite plan.
And as you can imagine, these are sort of companion plans because what we do is very similar. So our organization was set up very similarly, and we kind of mirrored each other as we went along through this process. Same sort of upper level leadership. Kelly Strock, I think at the time was actually the section manager, and then Leslie McElhanley, our Pops and Regs manager. What was a little different with the pheasant plan, we had Nate Huck leading as our upland bird consultant, Greg Hoke, as many of you know, as sort of our habitat program lead. And then when you got down to our project teams, we were represented by research, programs, walk-in access, acquisition, outreach, and then our upland game bird committee. So you see a similar structure and some of the same repeat names that contributed to both on different days when we were working on these plans.
So the timeline and kind of process overview here, we held a project kickoff meeting in March of this past year, 2024. Started things out with a big public engagement questionnaire, went out on our DNR website, trying to get comments from the public on what we should be looking at, changes that should be made. We held an initial stakeholder meeting in April. And when we say stakeholders, we're talking all the duck and pheasant conservation groups, tribal partners, soil and water conservation districts, Bowser, everything from the Farm Bureau, honey producers, a real broad section of stakeholders we invited to that meeting. And the goal was to look back at those old plans and kind of make some strategies for the future. So in May through July, we had a number of meetings, almost weekly meetings with our project teams. Took what we learned from our stakeholders and started formulating new objectives, strategies, performance metrics. And then, our stakeholders requested a second meeting actually to look at this stuff. So we had one of those in July to kind of pull things through. We did another public review comment session in September. And kind of what the goal was to get it to section leadership, kind of during those hunting seasons in October when everything's fresh on people's minds. Next, Joe. So kind of the public engagement, in September, we had a lot of outreach again, press release, almanac items. We had an engage page where we posted comments and solicited more information on our draft objectives, strategies, performance metrics. Got those from the public. Had a live webinar for both the duck and pheasant plans in October. And then closed comment period in October, and essentially got to our final drafts. Next, Joe. So final revisions, we were hoping to get this done here kind of at the kickoff the hunting seasons, but it got pushed a little bit. things take time. There was a lot of interest in both of these plans. So month of October was reviewing public comments and revising documents. November was a lot of final DNR leadership review, and then we went with creative services and kind of redid both plans, make them look nice and sharp. And they were both released to the public there at the roundtable in January, which was a good event, I think, to release these. Next, Joe. So now we'll kind of dig into the meat and potatoes here a little bit. So just some general plans before Joe and I delve into specifics here. But we added some keywords to some of our goal statements. We reduced both plans. They were I think like 7 and 9 objectives to start with, so we reduced them both down to 5. We did a importance ranking as part of the public review process, so we kind of ordered our strategies based on that importance ranking. Quite a bit of work with our partner and tribal inclusive language, especially in the duck plan. Tribes are very interested in, a waterfall across the state, and we had quite a bit of back and forth with the tribes on some language there. Performance metrics. One of the things we found from our first plan is that sometimes we have performance metrics, but they're not easy to measure. And we really wanted to clean that up, make sure we had performance metrics that were both easy for the department and for the public to kind of see how well are we doing or scoring, on a year-to-year basis. So we put some emphasis on that and being able to accurately track that performance over the years. And then some, as I mentioned earlier, tribal collaboration section there on the waterfall plan. Next, Joe. So just some keywords, and these will probably look pretty similar to the council here. But we added the word protected into the duck plan on wetlands and associated upland habitat for ducks. I'm sure most members are aware, habitat is our focus here on both of these plans. We added the word restore to maintain, enhance, and restore wetland, grassland, and forest habitat for ducks. And then our other two is, public awareness and opportunities for outdoor recreation relating to ducks. Joe?
So very similar change on the pheasant plan also, and our goals essentially remain the same. We thought those goals were, held very well since 2020, but just adding those keywords and partially to better align with, terminology that, for instance, the Outdoor Heritage Fund uses. So, but needless to say, very important keywords. So the goals are very similar from plan to plan.
So back to the duck plan, our 5 key objectives, you'll see these similar, overarching objectives, but between the two plans. I'm not going to read through them all, but I'll just kind of give the highlights here. But objective 1 was, it's acquisition protection. Involves, protecting key priority areas, acquisitions, supporting our partner conservation groups in their acquisitions, and then the walk-in program, essentially improving outdoor access to outdoor recreation on those acres. Objective 2 was really that's the habitat goal. It's increasing quality and quantity of duck habitat through restoration enhancement on basins all over the state. Objective 3. This is our collaboration with Fish and Wildlife Service and other organizations and departments. Waterfall ducks being a little different in that we're active members of the Migratory Joint Ventures and the North American Waterfall Management Plan. So stressing that importance of habitat work in Canada at times and research at a flyway level and not just state specific. Objective 4, all about outreach, working with our PR folks to essentially do a better job as DNR delivering our message. We're good and we're primed to deliver the habitat work out there, but sometimes I think we can do a better job of telling our story and what we're doing. Whether that be, private land stewardship, DNR management, recreational opportunities, all things kind of public relations. That was difficult to track in the past plan. And then the last objective, kind of the research and monitoring on waterfall. Duck Minnesota flyway surveys just wrapped up here this week, flying our waterfall surveys. So working with our research group to really assess what long-term research and monitoring priorities we have for ducks in the state.
You know, as on behalf of the pheasant plan, we were in a very similar situation. We had a reduction in objectives, went with 5 objectives. They mostly mirror the duck plan also, with the objective 1 being focused on acquisition, protection, and access. Objective 2 really being the habitat objective. Objective 3, as Rob mentioned, was kind of the tip of the hat to the partners. When we looked back at our old plan, we did have a long discussion about, okay, this is a DNR plan, but how do we make it useful for all our stakeholders and partners? And so we changed around some language, as we've mentioned, to make that more inclusive. And so partners could refer back to this plan and be recognized for doing good work on our wildlife areas within this plan. Again, objective 4 is our outreach objective, telling our story about the habitat we're restoring and the birds we're producing. And then last but not least, our research and monitoring priorities in objective 5.
So other habitat objective strategies, you know, kind of the meats and bones of these plans. On the duck side of things, the one main thing that I would say kind of is an overarching theme on it is this new waterfall strategic habitat support tool. Now, and when I say that, it's, you know, the pheasant plan and other plans, a lot of them refer to the prairie plan that was produced a number of years ago. But, you know, and ducks fit into that, you know, out on the prairie landscape. But waterfall in the state, we have migrational habitat. There's a lot of forest habitat where ducks are important. And so we're taking this on as a kind of a focus support tool here. In the next couple of years, we're going to look at where are those waterfall strategic habitat support areas? Where are those priority areas that, you know, we really want to focus some of our duck management here in the future? Things like right there in downtown Bloomington, you know, on the Mississippi Valley, you know, a lot of birds migrate through that Bloomington corridor there. Places like that, wild rice lakes up in the north here. So really kind of a statewide look at where are the best duck habitats, not just nesting and rearing, but migration habitat too, and using our partners' assistance to develop that kind of that support tool here going forward, which will guide a lot of our habitat management here and enhancement across the state. The thought, you know, other overreaching thing was, you know, maintaining these habitat programs that the council has been showed a lot of support of here over the years. Both our wetlands and shallow lakes programs, getting a lot of on the ground work done. Forest management, we can definitely do a better job internally coordinating our forest management practices to improve duck habitat, not just, you know, riparian habitat, but we're also talking roost trees. A lot of new research there on distance from water for some of these species that rely on forest habitats, ringnecks, wood ducks, common golden eyes, those species. More communication with our partners via these habitat enhancement meetings, watershed districts, partnering with them and in other areas where we can provide good duck habitat on the landscape. Outreach, as I mentioned before, kind of telling our story, highlighting our work on ducks and duck habitat, and then, you know, utilizing our waterfall committee and habitat programs to take a more active role. In the past, our waterfall committee has largely been regulations based, but looking at things like refuges, feeding and resting areas, and then, you know, that habitat component that you know, is front and center for ducks in the state of Minnesota.
A few items of note where we drilled down in the pheasant plan. You know, we did take a look at our coordination levels, and I think in the prior plan we talked about kind of one overarching coordination meeting. And what we wanted to do, we wanted to kind of create a better model to coordinate locally more often in maybe in an informal basis. And we kind of looked at a model like the Prairie Plans LTT, local technical team model, where you're meeting with all the different NGOs and governmental stakeholders that work on habitat and kind of brainstorming as a community focus areas in given counties and things like that. So we definitely wanted to work on that within the plan. So that's an item of note. We talk, obviously in objective 2, the habitat objective, where we're managing and enhancing, we have our traditional tools like prescribed fire, things like that, but we wanted to really focus a little bit too on non-traditional tools, burning outside of the spring window, using grazing, using prescribed haying as a means to manage and maintain pheasant habitat across the pheasant range. We want to, again, we changed up the language a little bit to support and encourage partner-led habitat enhancement. It was very timely because at the same time we were working on our WAMA reporting system, we were able real time to add a window where we could recognize and track how much work partners are doing on wildlife management areas, as many of the council members know through Outdoor Heritage Fund grants and other means. Again, outreach, focus more on managing, highlighting how we manage ducks, pheasants, so on. And then same model as the duck, involving the Upland Bird Committee along with the habitat programs to take a more active role and then emphasize that research and give us good outputs as far as management guidance from research that could be disseminated through the Upland Bird Committee.
Just some examples here of some of the performance metrics, measurable activities that we can report back to, you guys are on the council, and then the general public, the public in general. Things like 4,500 acres acquired on a yearly basis. The strategic habitat support tool being finalized. Acres of walk-in area per year and permanent funding for that. On the duck side, surveying, assessing 1,000 wetland acres, 500 basins a year, 5,000 acres of restoration enhancement. So we looked back at what some of our numbers were, and then also tried to strive for improvement and realistic goals going forward for the next 5 years. Shallow lake assessments on 35,000 acres, managing 90 shallow lakes and 80 wild rice lakes annually. Some new lake designations. So just kind of those performance metrics that really hold our feet to the fire a little bit, but also make sense for us to strive for here in the next 5 years.
Very similar additions to the duck plan. Down here in the southern region, we're working pretty much on the same properties, benefiting both these species. So that's why we have so much alignment in this. One thing I'll point out too, in the, from objective 2, where we have the restore enhance 60,000 acres of grasslands per year, and then you drop down to the bullet below that, that's where we want to try to incorporate some of that non-traditional management on roughly half of that 60,000 acre goal that we're working on as far as management enhancement across the state. So otherwise, a lot of the same items apply for the pheasant plan. So, we have our work cut out for us. We have our work ahead, and now it's time for implementation. And one thing we did, as we did start to wrap up these plans, we did start to think about, okay, how are we going to track this? Who's going to track it? And then we need to track this on a yearly basis. So if we are coming in short on a particular goal, we can make some real-time adaptive management moves to hopefully bolster some of those accomplishment goals that we're going on. So we've worked pretty hard to disseminate this out to the area, regional, and program staff to implement these strategies and what some of the goals are. Again, like I said, it was timely because it coincided with our WAMA system that's set up to now spatially track our accomplishments. So it'll be easier to query particular accomplishments based on time periods and types of accomplishments. And then last but not least, we kind of created a matrices or a spreadsheet based on the strategy and then how we were going to collect that data, who was going to collect that data, who's responsible, and then kind of yearly totals. So we can, again, keep track yearly of the items we're accomplishing and then make changes where changes are needed. With that, that's what we have for you for today, but we're willing to answer any questions that you might have regarding these plans or the formulation of these plans. Thank you.
Suzanne?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and appreciate the presentation. And you're sort of in my wheelhouse here, so I get a little excited about this stuff. So just a couple of questions. First of all, can you talk a little bit about what you mean by non-traditional management activities?
Yeah, so well, you talked about it earlier as I was listening in about things like go grazing. That would be things like using cattle. That's far more common on WMAs. Prescribed haying is a big one where we can mimic disturbance of grasslands by haying outside the nesting season and rotate those haying fields around to keep early successional habitat, keep trees from moving in, things like that. So those are just some examples. We're finding now that we've increased our burn capacity. We're able to burn at different times of the year than, the spring window, which, traditionally in the South was April and May. We're burning in the winter time, in the summertime, to get different types of effects. So those are just a few examples. Yeah.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate it, Joe. That's really helpful. And then because there can be a lot of overlap between what is considered waterfowl habitat as well as pheasant habitat, how do you track whether a particular acquisition or restoration activity is counted, bean counters towards pheasants versus waterfowl, or do you double dip and double count that? How does that work?
To a certain extent, we will probably end up double counting, or not double counting, but the same acres will be the same acres. The difference in scope is the waterfowl plan is sort of a statewide plan. There's kind of ducks everywhere. The pheasant plan is focused mainly on the pheasant range. Now that pheasant range is changing a little bit, and we recognize that, and we got to come up with having a finite number of counties that we're looking at those accomplishments, but that's the kind of the long and the short answer. And so we'll have to sort of tease those numbers out. But yeah, when down here, at least when we're working, if we're doing prairie management, we're working on ducks and pheasants both at the same time. So
yeah. No, I appreciate that. Okay, thank you. I appreciate getting into the weeds a little bit for me. So
yeah, you bet.
One thing to add, Chairman Hartwell and members, too, is that when I should add this when we started this kickoff, but the Commissioner's office really wanted this to be field led. I'm sure you realize that a lot of times these species plans and these other plans are written by planners in St. Paul, and it's not. Maybe sometimes I'm a field guy here. I'm used to getting my hands dirty, and so there was this concerted effort to the field needs to own this. They need to help with this. And that's why you see Joe and I here up in front of you. I don't have a political bone in my body. I'm not a long-term, dealing with the planner. I'm the guy out there setting up the prairie restoration and doing the wetland restoration, doing the surveys. And so that's why we were kind of chosen and volunteered for this. And we've been going around to the different regions and other groups. And, this is a field-led, sponsored, plans here. At least that's, and those are people that we picked for our team, to really know what's going on out there in that landscape, and can identify those areas that it would make the most sense for ducks and pheasants.
Council members, any other questions for us? Okay, if not, thank you very much for letting us present today, and reach out anytime if you have any further questions that pop up, and appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you all.
We must have a technical.
Yeah, I'm not sure they were able to hear
Can
that.
you hear us?
Yes, we got you now. Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Ted, ask your question again.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
The last couple of legislative bonding bills have included, I believe it's $19 million for water storage, much of which it's for water quality. A lot of it's going to end up being connected with agricultural drainage projects. Those of us who worked on securing that appropriation are hoping that much of that money will go into wetland restoration, which seems to fit closely with your duck plan. And I'm just wondering if you've been involved with, or if the Board of Water and Soil Resources has been involved with the development of the duck plan to see where those two projects might fit together.
Thank you for the question. Yes, the Board of Water and Soil were one of our original partner stakeholder groups. They've been with us all along. We definitely partner with them on different projects. Me as a wildlife manager, I'm on numerous watershed district teams, looking at that flood retention where, yeah, we can do some fall drawdowns to store water in the spring, but also provide good duck habitat on some of those wetland restorations. And I agree. I think we've come a long way from the old school, just big monster flood retention, 1 square mile dike all the way around, to focusing on these larger wetland restorations that can be dual purpose. So yes, we're definitely actively seeking out that partnership in those projects.
Yeah, and council member, I'll add too, we did get some really good agency input from Bowser, NRCS, MPCA that went into these plans. So their input was very helpful. And we even though it was a DNR focused action plan, we wanted to make it inclusive enough where they could refer back to that plan when taking on such efforts as you talked about with with the water storage grants through Bowser. So thank you for the question.
Any other questions? Thank you for spending time with us this morning.
All right. Thank you all.
Take care.
Next, we have in June scheduled to do a field trip. Someone want to talk about what you're thinking we should do?
Mr. Chair and members, so we have been offered a tour of the Fergus Falls area with Fish and Wildlife and all of those partners up in that area. Every year the council does what I'd call a formal tour where we have a tour bus and we all go up and tour all of the previous funded outdoor heritage funded sites. It's a little different this year because it's a little further away, so it's harder to drive all of that way, do a tour of a bunch of sites and then come back in the same day. So that's the issue that we oftentimes run in is the the further away we go, the less time we have to spend looking at projects if we need to get back by a certain time in order to be ready for our meeting the next day. So that's something that I think the council should look at, is if we decide to go up to Fergus, what our meeting the following day would look like. If we want to try and be back in St. Paul to meet here for the council meeting, or if we'd be comfortable doing a fully remote meeting so that we can spend a full day, up north in Fergus looking at sites. So that's one thing to consider. And then also, we also have what we'll call informal tour sites. So if there's any projects that the council wants to look at or different parts of the state that they want to tour, OHF has funded projects everywhere in the entire state. So, that's always a possibility to go and look at those sites as well. And that can be at any time of the year. We've done it. Last year, we went up to the St. Louis estuary and rented a pontoon and looked at that. And that was in October. We've done many of those as well. So reach out to council staff, and if you have any suggestions or requests, we can make those happen.
So quite a few years ago, we did field trips where we went out, we spent the night, and then the next day had our meeting, half a day meeting, and came back. Has that been considered, or are you asking us, what do we think, or?
Mr. Chair and members, we can do whatever the council wants. I think doing a fully remote meeting would allow people to have their schedules very flexible, so that if you need to leave right away after the tour and be somewhere else, you don't have to be back in St. Paul. It would give us a lot of more flexibility to provide a better, more thorough tour schedule.
I'm not following how, if we had a meeting in Fergus Falls that was also virtual, for those that wanted to go on a tour and then have a meeting the following day, how that's better to do a fully remote meeting versus a hybrid meeting. What did I miss?
Hybrid in Fergus Falls?
Yeah.
Yep. Mr. Chair and members, we can do that. It would just be, we've talked to our IT people about that, and it would be a little bit more difficult to find, a spot that can provide the same type of IT system that we have here to set up the same type of meeting. But if we go fully remote, just like we did when we were during COVID, that would be.
Which was so much fun for.
Yeah. But so there's a trade-off there of, if you want to go further away from the cities, then, we have to figure out how to make the public meeting process and open meeting laws work.
So we've lost a number of members. Let me suggest that you do a quick polling with an option of a field trip with a fully remote, a field trip with a hybrid meeting, or a local field trip, and poll everyone in the next couple of days. And those that respond will be the ones that guide what we do. Does that work for everyone?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
just a brief comment, having some familiarity with the Fergus Falls Wetland Management District there, they a hybrid meeting because
Suzanne, you're breaking up.
a lot of
Maybe
hybrid
you could kill your video and a little better.
Okay,
if you could
how's that? Any
repeat
better?
yourself. Yep, a little
Is that
better.
better?
Yep.
Okay. Being familiar with the Fergus Falls Wetland Management District area and that part of the state, if we reached out to the Fish and Wildlife Service, they have been doing a lot of hybrid meetings over the past 5 years or so, and so they may have some capacity to help host a hybrid meeting from their location. Just something to look into. as an option if we wanted to do a hybrid type meeting there as well. So just a suggestion.
Great, thanks. Senator Herr, I saw you come on the screen just briefly. Were you wanting to say something?
No, I don't have anything. I just want to show them here.
Okay.
Just in case.
Great, thank you. Do you have any preference on meetings and tours?
I go with the majority, and I think that being remote, being Fergus Falls will be a little challenging, but be interesting too. You know, I like challenge.
All right, we'll do a quick polling and schedule something that hopefully most people can participate with. But we'll always have a hybrid option for it somehow. It may not be quite as smooth as at the Capitol, but at worst case, we all bring our phones and laptops and we do a meeting the way we've all done for the last few years. All right. Any other thoughts on meetings? We had no interest from anyone to address the council. Sandy has one thing, however.
I just wanted to give a quick update on the process and expectations for new members. So
Okay.
they are aware of emails and things that they'll be coming your way. So proposals were received. Staff will be reviewing them over the next 7 to 10 days. We are looking for technical issues, things that don't make sense, omissions, which may require project managers to make minor edits and resubmit their proposals. We are hoping to give the council members 3 to 4 weeks to review proposals. And the evaluation forms are due back to the LSOHC office July 15th, along with your conflict of interest form. We feel that once you get the proposals and you see what they are in organizations, that will better able you to fill out your conflict of interest form. The proposal books will be being put together by Tom. If anyone wants them, he'll be reaching out to everybody to see if you want a book or what you would like to review online. So just quickly, that was the next few steps, and watch your email box for communication from staff.
And for those that are new, you can either get a big binder or get it electronically. It'll be available electronically to everyone. If you want a physical copy, you can get that as well. I'm told we have 58 proposals, and in the past, we've had requests for roughly double the amount of funding that we had, which is about 160 million we're estimating. This year, we have requests for 500 million. So the number of requests is relatively constant, but the average amount of the requests has gone up quite a bit. Senator Herr, you've got your hand up.
Oh, yes, thank you. And now I do want to say something. I just want to, earlier, I jumped in a little late into this meeting. I just want to express my welcome to Representative Samantha Vang, and also congratulate Senator Lane for being elected as a legislative member. So thank you.
Great. Thank you. Mark has the last.
Senator Herr, you were not here earlier when we were talking about the legislative process this year and the passing of the bill, but I just wanted to reach out and say thank you very much for your chairmanship in the Senate committee and your authorship of the omnibus bill and the outdoor heritage bill. We really appreciate your activity, and you're taking the bull by the horns there. Thank you very much.
Great. I would agree. Thank you. With that, there being no further business, we will adjourn. Thank you all for coming.
Was that all? Very good.
Just for fun.
That way.